Reddit Ask Me Anything. I am Suki Kim, an undercover journalist who taught English to North Korea's elite in Pyongyang. Ask Me Anything. Suki Kim is an investigative journalist, a novelist, and the only writer ever to go live undercover in North Korea, and the author of a New York Times best-selling literary non-fiction Without You, There Is No Us, undercover among the sons of North Korea's elite. How did they feel about learning English? Resentful? Enthusiastic? Indifferent? They had no choice. This was what they were ordered to do, and they studied so diligently because they were obedient. It is a culture where they have to listen to the authorities. But little by little, they would show some frustrations. They found it hard. Their dictionaries were outdated, which translated Korean words to English, and they didn't like to use English dictionaries for definition. They found different accents by the teachers, men who were missionaries from deep south, with the southern accent, or from New Zealand etc. difficult to understand. But these were just practical difficulties. Their real feelings about having to learn them, they couldn't really show it. They just felt worried that they were spending all their time learning English when their majors were within the field of science and technology. Did you spend all of your time using English? I presume you speak Korean. Were you allowed to use it with your students? Or was that discouraged? How proficient were your students with English by the age of 19 or so? Had they been learning since early childhood? How were they chosen for this education stream? She said in her book that she was not allowed to speak a single word of Korean to her students, which makes sense really. People who have been to NK have said that the minders speak the language English speakers mind Americans, German speakers mind Germans, and so forth, virtually flawlessly. She taught the children of the elite, and the elite get certain advantages there. What widely held belief among your students surprised you the most? Edit. Words. There were so many things. They just learned totally upside down information about most things. But one thing I think most people do not realize is that they learned that South Korea and US attacked North Korea in 1950, and that North Korea won the war due to the bravery of their great leader Kim Il-sung. So they celebrate Victory Day, which is a huge holiday there. So this complete lie about the past then makes everything quite illogical, because how do you then explain the fact that Korea is divided still? If actually North Korea won the war, one would have to question that strange logic, which they do not. So it's not so much that they get taught lies as education, but that second step of questioning what does not make sense, in general, does not happen. Not because they are stupid but because they are forbidden, and also their intelligence is destroyed at a young age. There were many examples of such. What kind of measures did you have to go through to make sure your notes or any other evidence of your actual work would never be discovered? I kept them all on USB sticks, which I kept on my body at all times. I erased the trace off my computer every single time I signed off. I also created a document within a document so that my notes looked like a school material. I also created a backup copy on SD card which I hid in secret places in the dark, with the light off, just in case there were camera in the room. What is the weirdest thing you saw? Since so many people seem to be curious about this question, let me answer belated. I think perhaps it's that word weird that made me pause, which is why I could not answer immediately. I am trying to put this in a way that isn't sounding judgmental perhaps, but from our Western perspective, so many things just do not make sense. The great leader badges on each citizen they are required to wear at every waking moment. The empty highway devoid of human trace. The theater set up where people suddenly appear to lay flowers to show respect to the great leader etc. Once on an empty highway, I saw a perfectly dressed woman with a handbag wearing heels walking as though she were walking to an office in the city. But it was a farmland with nothing around. No bus stop anywhere near. So where the hell was she going? And where did she pop from, as if you photoshopped her from another poster and put her in that scenery? However, it wasn't that, it was weird. I felt this sinking feeling each time I saw things like that, because it's unnatural, it's controlled, it's contrived, it just does not add up, which ultimately suggests human sacrifice, to be purposely taken by minders to a church there with a minister and the parishioners all singing, knowing there's no religious freedom there, because it suggests that each one was put there to perform for your eyes only, which suggests that their will is not being considered, which is the basic human right. which also then suggests that they are there in fear of punishment, or to be taken to a group of college students and ask each one separately who their favorite author is and they all answer the exact same one. To be taken to the Great Leader Flower exhibition in the freezing cold, -degrees, unheated building where there were hundreds of flower display from every organization across the country, where they all stand around recite the virtue and glory of the Great Leader Flower for hours and hours. etc. etc. North Korea is full of these things. So it stops being weird, but you recognize these things as their reality, but that recognition just forces that horrible knot in your stomach each time because you become quickly aware of the price it suggests. Which really just is human tears and blood. Basically it runs on fear, and what looks weird to us is actually their fare. I know that is not enough perhaps for this question, but best I could do in this brief answer format. Thank you. Are there any linguistic things, cultural habits that North Koreans do that the rest of us Koreans also do, like the agu and the omomo when surprised? Generally it's the same, yes. The accent is different and they have some phrasings and words that are different or feel quite old-fashioned or war-related vocabularies. But in general the difference is almost regional, where one has that in South Korea from region to region also. But when you are talking about the basic exclamation you cite, when bumping into things or surprised, they are pretty much not that different. What ESL teaching methods and approaches were favored by schools in North Korea? Additionally, what kind of resources, texts were available for you to use in the classroom? Only those texts allowed in China. All that was pre-approved by the North Korean authority. I tried to install my own methods of essay writing and letter writing to investigate what they are really thinking, but that was not a part of the official text. But I insisted and got them approved by the North Korean authority called Counterpart. Was the experience frightening in any way? Yes, frightening every second. Not because I was in Pyongyang, but because I was taking notes writing the book in secret. For average people who visit Pyongyang for whatever organizational reason, that is not a place for a personal curiosity visit, since it's basically a gulag positing as a country. It would not be frightening since everything's so controlled. What made you want to go undercover in North Korea considering all of the dangers? You know. I don't really know. I could give all the usual answers, how I was so tortured by the injustice there, which is true, and how I felt horrified watching so many separation that happened to families, including my own, which is also true, but the answer is a far more complicated one. So I recently wrote a long essay on this very topic for Lapham's Quarterly, which should be coming out any day now, so I will tweet that out when the piece comes out. I think it has something to do with fear, how that society is built on fear, and how fear can dictate us, and how we try to fight that fear in life. I know it's maybe a bit nonsensical in this Ask Me Anything answer format, for which I apologize. But the more accurate answer would be that I jumped in there because it was the most scary place in the world for me. If that makes any sense. What did you enjoy about NK? Enjoy would not be the right word, I think, but I have great empathy for the place because they are suffering. I am American, but I am also Korean, and as a Korean, I feel for the less privileged half. Also as a human being, I find the existence of the place and the inhumane treatment of the people there unacceptable. So it's not that I enjoy North Korea, which I do not. I find the place to be horrifying, but I am drawn to North Korea. But joy is of course there. My students I met there and fell in love with were all full of joy, because they were young and sweet and adorable and innocent, and there were some fun times we shared. But they were also full of darkness, because of their society. What advice would you have for the general public regarding how to understand the world, especially the other who we have not personally encountered, specifically, in the age of infinite information, fake news, and polarized sources? How does the public sift through and make meaning of their world? This is really relevant. Fake news seems to dictate our world now, but I do believe due to the rise of fake news, or the method in which they can travel has grown tremendously due to the internet and the ease speed of the internet publishing, the need for the real in-depth news has also risen. So if you were to look around, you will see so much more information on almost everything. I do think this means we have to just look more. And also I think because of the policing that happens as a result of the surplus of info, we can't get away with bogus information anymore the same way. North Korea is a perfect example of there being so much junk out there posing as info. So then you have to check who is saying that, who is writing it, what do they know etc etc. In the past, the story of the other belonged solely to Orientalists, who basically imposed their colonial view of the other. Much of that still goes on. But I hope with all the policing, we are enforcing more quality control. Perhaps, so that you can't just claim yourself expert when you don't speak the language, or hardly had been to the place, etc. So in fact, the general public can in fact inform themselves more thoroughly and responsibly these days, if they care to. Hi, which do you like writing more, non-fiction or fiction? Do you consider yourself a writer of Korean American literature or does that tag category bother you? I thought The Interpreter was a great novel, one of my favorites. How long did it take between the time you had this idea and actually going through with it? Apologies if you covered that in the book, it's been a while since I read it. The whole idea for the literary non-fiction on North Korea came in February 2002 when I first went to Pyongyang for the 60th birthday celebration of Kim Jong-il and wrote the nib cover essay. I realized then that an essay was just not enough, and there was just so much more I felt about this topic. Also given my family background etc. From then on, it was trying to study the topic as thoroughly as I could, by literally researching it from afar and close. That is, following defectors through the defection route, interviewing separated families, and situating myself in places where I could either go to North Korea or learn more in-depth stuff about it. Even my Fulbright research grant, which allowed me to live in Seoul for 14 months in 2009, was for this book, as well as each visit that allowed me to get a different perspective. Understanding it from all sides was a key, and I felt that I had exhausted that by the time I lived there in 2011. So all in all, I would say about a decade. How much did you make as a teacher? Easy thing to get into. Teaching English in Korea? Last one. Any dangers associated with just teaching in Korea? It was an unpaid job. I believe every teacher was sponsored by their church. There is not a danger in teaching in North Korea, but this is a gulag nation, and America is their enemy, and there is no diplomatic relations between them. So if you are a teacher from the US, then, yes, you are in danger, as evidenced by the recent hostage crisis where 2 Americans detained by North Korea, currently still held there, are from the university where I taught. What was the best thing you've eaten in North Korea? I can answer this if you like. PFC, Pyongyang's answer to KFC, was a nice break from the kimchi. Bro, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. Thanks for watching, mate. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more high quality content.